So kind of in preface to tonight, I want to tell you guys a story. The story happened 2020, and this is a story about a guy named Pierre. I will never name my kid Pierre because of this story. 2020, it was probably March of 2020, I was finishing a house, and Jaden, who's now my business partner, he's like, hey, I found a good tenant for you. He works at Lowe's, and he's looking for a house, so you should rent to him. So rather than do good due diligence, like I knew better, I went off of Jaden's recommendation. Now, Pierre worked at Lowe's in the appliance area, and he was a sales guy. So, should be a red flag. If you got a sales guy wanting to rent from you, maybe he's a sales guy. And nothing against sales guys, but filling out an application and whatnot would have gone a long way. I began to rent to him, and within 3 weeks, him and his wife got divorced. About a month later, he hurt his back at Lowe's. And I say this because my problem on the front end is I didn't do proper due diligence. I didn't do what I should have done right. Things were fine until circumstances changed. And it's part of what we're going to talk about with setting things up properly and legally is you're fine doing things a certain way until circumstances change, until the lawsuit comes or the guy hurts his back or gets divorced, and suddenly you find out really the condition of things. Pierre lost his job while he was getting, Lowe's was paying him, but he quit paying me. And again, rather than me getting proper help and getting an attorney to help, I thought I'll DIY an eviction. And has anyone ever evicted somebody? You Google it. It's no big deal. You go to the court clerk. But the problem is I went to the clerk and I told him the deal, and they gave me a piece of paper, but they gave me the wrong piece of paper. And I got before the judge, and the judge said, and Pierre didn't show up to court, so it was a slam dunk, but the judge said, well, you're evicting him for possession of your house, but not your back rent. I should have taken it. Again, I didn't have proper advice from an attorney. And so I said, it's fine, him and I are in communication, we'll work this out, we'll figure it out. I'll just come back with the right paperwork. The problem is 3 days later, the moratorium hit. And if you guys don't know what the moratorium was, in 2020, the federal government said people didn't have to pay their rent. And that if I were to evict for somebody not paying their rent, I would be fined $250,000 or 5 years in prison. And so landlords were handcuffed because people just quit paying their rent, and there was really nothing landlords could do to get their money back. And I think it was like a 4-month period of time initially. The government extended it. There was laws passed that said they would pay landlords. The problem is it was bottlenecked with the way the government does things. In the meantime, I'm getting further and further behind. I didn't have the portfolio I do now to weather it. I was weathering it, but it was way more emotional then than it would be now. Finally, though, I hired an attorney. And this was going to be my intro for Jeff tonight. The importance of hiring an attorney and getting things set up right. It's real easy when we're starting off in real estate or business to go out and start an LLC. When I first started my first LLC, I went to the state website, punched in my name, paid $100, and was happy because I had LLC entity in my name. The problem is I didn't have any docs to document it. I really had no protection, nothing the LLC was going to do. And that was a problem, and that's a problem with DIY, and that was my intro for Jeff. It's still applicable as we talk about wills and trust or just doing things properly as investors. Fast forward with Pierre, hired an attorney. We did get him out, and we got him out on a lease violation because the moratorium didn't say you couldn't get him out on a lease violation, and it was just non-payment. So we did get him out on that. It was interesting because you've been to an eviction process. You give your paperwork to the judge. They don't even read it. They just kind of. She didn't read it. She thought we were evicting for non-payment, but she didn't know the guy had signed the moratorium. The moratorium had actually got extended. We tried to time it so it started April 1st, but Pierre didn't show up to represent himself, so she just voted to my favor. We kicked him out. But Pierre, at the same time, the government was offering free attorneys to people that were pushed out of their house wrongly. So not only was the government protecting them for non-payment, but also giving them lawyers for free. So that summer, I actually got a letter saying that he was suing me to get the judgment I had against him for the back rent. It was like $10,000. It was just shy of $10,000. And so sure enough, I have to go to court, and judge chews me out for evicting him during moratorium. And she takes his judgment away from me of what he owed me. And it was like, that's that. Like, so be it. And not that I would have ever seen the money anyway, but at least I felt justified a little bit. The good news is that Pierre had started the process with the government back in January. And in September, I got a call from Community Cares, and they said, hey, we got a check here for you, but Pierre wants us to send it directly to him. Are you okay with that? And of course, I said no. But Pierre, remember I told you he was into sales. So he's into sales, and so he gets me on the phone, and he says, listen, Marty, I'm not going to release that money, and you're not going to get it if I don't release it. So we both lose unless you take less. And if you take less, then you'll get some and I'll get some. So honestly, that's what I did. It wasn't a lot less. I think I got about $8,000. But just to kind of tell you the nature of the thing. End of the story, I did get paid, but not all of it. But the most valuable thing I learned is don't DIY legal stuff. Go out and get an attorney and do it proper. Real life story. This is in the District Court of Logan County. This happened today. We took somebody to court to get him removed, and she's actually suing us for emotional distress. And I'm dead serious on this. The judge kind of threw it out, but she's going to maybe hear it later. The difference is I have an attorney, we've documented things, we can back it up, and what she's suing me for is her shower is broken. We went in and investigated it, and we told her we'd be back to fix it. We came back 3 days later, but we failed to give her a 24-hour notice, other than we'll be back to fix it. And her son wasn't at school that day, it was President's Day or something like that, and so he was home, and it scared him, is what she says. And so, because, I mean, we announced herself, we knocked, this and that. We fixed it, but now she says he has emotional issues, and she has to sleep with him on the couch, and now her back is bad because of this. I'm dead serious, I'm not making it up. It's all in this document. And yeah, so she's suing us, and she wants free rent. The deal is though, we've documented, we've done things right, we've done it properly, and she doesn't. I mean, the judge threw out today and said, you need to pay him rent and get caught up, and we'll hear this 1st of August. So I feel a whole lot better about this situation because I've got someone in my phone, an attorney, that can handle this, and I can talk to him about it, rather than thinking I need to do this myself. So that's kind of my story on why as we start off as investors or even progress as investors, it's really, really important to get legal help and set things up properly and not think that we're the experts. We're not. And even if we are the expert, it's still good to get outside advice and whatnot. So you guys have any questions?
I got a comment. I was eating breakfast with him through this process of the eviction, and I would leave, and I'm like, man, I don't know if he's going to get his money. I mean, and he did. He got most of his money, but he was smiling then, just like he's smiling now, and he's like, I don't know what's going on, but so.
That may be a man who trusts God.
Well, that's a big deal right there.
I've been in business for 25 or 30 years, and what I've come to learn is that there are two camps of attorneys, and some are preventative lawyers and some are litigation lawyers. And the preventative lawyers are really your friend.
Yeah.
And so they'll help you set up your drug testing program, or they'll help you with probates and wills and trusts. And so they'll help you review contracts or work on your lease or whatever that is to prevent problems. So anyways, those are the ones that you want to retain, and that really will minimize how much sleep you lose and money you lose.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar to doing taxes yourself. Like I used to do my own taxes, and then I realized if someone else does my taxes, they'll talk to the IRS for me. Like, why would I not pay someone $1,000 to talk to the IRS if I get in trouble? So that's why I pay for someone else to do my taxes now, because I don't want to have that conversation with the IRS. I want a third person in that conversation. LLC, does anybody know what an LLC does? Like, on a scale of 1 to 5, different states have different like measuring rods, different stars, if you will. Nevada, I guess Nevada, and Wyoming, and there's one other one. Is it New Hampshire? Does anybody know? Delaware. It's Delaware. Those are the best. Those are number 5s for protection with LLCs. Oklahoma's like a 4-star. So we're pretty good, but we're not all the way there. California would be like a 1-star. There's still some protection there, but it's not as solid as your more conservative states, if you will. Do you want to talk about LLCs a little bit, kind of how they protect?
Yeah. Y'all have LLCs?
Yes.
Okay, everybody. Anybody have a trust?
Yes.
Okay. An LLC, is your LLC, when you die, is it going to go into your trust? Y'all are dealing with some good people right there. Because most people don't realize an LLC has to be probated, just like having a will or not having a will. LLCs give you good legal protection and some secretiveness or privacy as far as what you're doing. They don't do near as good as a trust, because a trust, a trust keeps you out of probate, which probate usually costs you between 3% and 8%. And just like you were saying, there's attorneys that are forward thinkers, and there's attorneys that love litigation. And does anybody's attorney work for free? No, they don't. So if they're litigating something, they're charging you. And just like Marty said, in the legal system, if you're a capitalist, you're evil. You're a rich, evil pig. Okay? And that's just the environment that we're in. We can't change it. But they don't realize you guys give people jobs. You give people places to live as long as they pay the rent. There's a ton of things that we need capitalists for, and that real estate motivates. I can remember when this town, you could not give away a piece of property back in the 80s. Okay? Hopefully we never get back that way again. But An LLC is, there's series LLCs and there are single member LLCs. There's different ways you can structure it. But an LLC is something that you can do that gives you a little bit of anonymity and a lot of liability. Now, when you go to the bank and you borrow, they make you take your LLC, your property out of your LLC? They don't? Okay, that's the first I've ever heard of that. So usually they make it, you take the property out of the LLC, loan you the money personally, then put it back in the LLC. So,
They just have us sign a personal guarantee.
okay.
So we can hold it in an LLC, but it's a personal guarantee. They're coming after it anyway.
Okay, yeah, they're gonna come after everything.
If it's your personal residence, they'll make you take it, they'll
Okay.
make you do it in your personal, but investment, it'll be,
Okay,
be done in business.
okay. Well, with a trust, it is the oldest, how's the best way to say this? A lot of judges have trusts, so it's got a lot of precedents, and they won't penetrate it. If they go in and say, oh, we're gonna change this up, they mess up the whole system. So they try not to, they just won't. And a trust, an LLC, if you go to probate, everything's on the table. With a trust, you eliminate probate. I'm not here to sell you a trust. I'm not a trust attorney. I'm an educator. But when you start comparing them, when you go through probate, it's 3 to 8% of your assets that you're probating. So just do it on $100,000. Minimum is $3,000. Our attorney tells us we can legally tell you between 3 and 8% because we do trusts in all 50 states, not just Oklahoma. I just specialize in Oklahoma. So a trust keeps you from being an evil capitalist because I just help the trust out if they own something.
Most people are going to hold their house in an LLC, and then the LLC is going to be owned by the trust, correct? Or do people own houses with trust?
They'll put their personal residence in a trust.
Yes.
Yeah. And they won't do it in an LLC. Most of them will put it in a trust.
Yeah.
If they have a trust. And a trust will hold bank accounts. You can't put a 401k in it, but you can make the trust the beneficiary of the 401k. So there's just a lot of things that can go inside the trust. Now, a lot of people think, well, how do I control it? It's no different than what you do right now. You write the checks off the checking account. It's your property. It's just
It just says Marty's Trust.
yeah. It
Yeah.
just says Marty's
Instead of
Trust.
Marty Hoffman.
Whitney Houston, y'all know her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Y'all know her death was very public. You can go and get the court records of what she owed and what she wanted. She had a will. Whoever advised her, you know, good Lord, they said, we want all this stuff to go into a trust for my daughter. Well, that's after the fact, man. Can you imagine all the litigation costs that they spent because of that? With a trust, and they come in this document right here. This is a specimen trust. With a trust, it all changes seamlessly. You don't go in front of a judge or anything like that. So it eliminates probate. Just like I'm dealing with my mom. In the last, I'll give you a couple of horror stories. I have tons of them. In the last 2 months, I lost my best friend of over 45 years. His mom and dad had a trust. He's 62 years old. He's taking care of his mom, which is in assisted living. Dad passed away. He's bragging to all of his buddies, man, this trust, it's awesome. You know, the DHS got a hold of him because his mom had 6 bank accounts. He whittled it down to 3. He's been taking care of her for several years. Mom calls up the bank, says, hey, somebody's stealing my money. She has significant wealth. The banker does what he's supposed to do. He turns them into the DHS. DHS does an audit, just goes all through his stuff. He hadn't charged her anything to take care of her the last 2 years. Okay, that's his full-time job. DHS gets done and says, you should be charging your mom because you're not earning income. He says, nah, I ain't worried about it. I need that money to take care of my mom. He dies. I talked to him on a Friday. He dies Sunday. Didn't have a trust. but he was sold on his mom's trust, but he's like us, we're not intentional, most of us, and we procrastinate. So here his family, which he's been married 4 times, he's on his 4th wife, he's been married her 16 years, got 4 kids. So I mean, all these different complications that we all have in our life, you know. And so now his family's dealing with that because he didn't want to do a trust.
Leslie, how do you advise somebody, Ezekiel starting out, do you advise him to go get a trust, or does he start an LLC to buy that piece of property?
Depending on, do you have over $100,000 net worth?
No.
I would probably do an LLC. I wouldn't spend the money for a trust at this point. A trust,
Because the LLC protects him, his tenant falls down the stairs.
right?
It keeps it in that LLC versus if he kept it in his personal name.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
he's a real estate agent and let's say he has that business built over here and that tenant falls and slips and says, hey, he's an agent too, I want that bank account. So
Yeah.
the LLC prevents them from breaching into his business. So,
It keeps that separation. So, and you need that legal separation, you know, because you don't want them. I pray all y'all are multimillionaires because we're not here for our health. We're here to worship God, and we're here to earn money to provide for our family and our kids. And when you boil it down, that's really the only reason we're here. If you want to make 10 million, I pray you make 10 million. But I don't want to see somebody come in and do a frivolous lawsuit because you traumatize somebody to go in and fix their bathroom. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. But we live in that kind of environment right now that, you know, if you're driving a nicer car than them, they're going to sue you. You know, how dare you, you know, work your butt off and to get something. So, any questions?
so piggybacking on your push for the trust, I would say the same thing. You know, it's easy to start off doing real estate and we do it in our personal name. But I would say, and develop that relationship with that attorney, get that LLC made or get the trust made, and get it in place before you need it rather than once you need it. Because once you need it,
It's too late.
it's too late.
Yeah.
The guy that died, it was too late.
Yeah. The other horror story, my mom passed away last week. My sister's an attorney, okay? And I'd ask Mom, where we at? Where we at? We taking care of your stuff? My dad died 34 years ago. My mom's like, oh, you know, my sister, you know, your sister's got it under control. Your sister's got it under control. Well, my mom has no will. Nothing. I mean, my sister had nothing under control, okay? And it's just bizarre because when we sold her personal residence before she passed, put it in my mom's checking account. Okay, well, what happens to a checking account when somebody passes and they're the only one on the account? It's tied up in probate. Well, I pitched a fit that day. I said, you need to go get on that account. Well, you know, I don't want to do that. Go do it. I mean, I'd probably come across as a jerk. She went and got on the account. There's a significant amount of money in there. And she died last week on the operating table. 81 years old. I guess they thought she was going to live forever. That doesn't happen, you know, unless y'all figured out a way to live forever on this earth. You don't need none of this stuff, but I don't think anybody's figured that out yet. And if you have, I want to talk to you because y'all can educate me. But like Marty says, be teachable or coachable. There's a big difference because I get around people that are smart, and they teach me things. I want to learn from y'all. I don't know it all. I just know specifically about, you know, trusts. And wills are good, but you know, wills, they're better than nothing. But a will still has to be probated.
So let's talk about that. So a will is me writing on a piece of paper, this is what I want to happen. This is my will, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's going to go through probate, and the court is going to say this was Marty's desires, so we're going to honor him, ideally. Whereas,
Supposed to.
yeah, just correct me if I'm wrong. I'll try to explain this, and you tell me yay or nay. Whereas a trust, it just keeps rolling through and it doesn't go through probate because is your will stated in your trust? It is, it's part of it.
You have a pour-over will, which covers things that don't have serial numbers and stuff like that, but that will doesn't have to be probated,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So,
So, it's easy to think, well, I have a will, we're good to go, but that's where the trust comes in, as far as the
that's where
protection.
the trust comes in. And there's so many moving pieces outside of it. The trust is simple, okay? But you have all these other things that happen. People will try to protest a trust, and when you read the trust, it's like, well, you can protest it, but if you reverse it, everything's going to go to Shriners Hospital.
Yeah.
And so you can spend tens of thousands of dollars, but this was your parents' last wish that their stuff goes to the Shriners Hospital. Most people walk away from it. They won't do it. Most attorneys walk away from it because they're not going to get their money to fight it.
Leslie, what happens if we have no will and no trust?
You have no will, no trust, it'll be probated just like my mom's. And if the kids can't agree on it, good horror story, real life horror story. My dad died 34 years ago, okay? I was at a birthday party of my grandson, or not my grandson, my brother's grandson, so I guess I'd make him want my nephew. I'm not good at that kind of stuff, but I was at the birthday party, and my sister commenced to tell me that I have two sisters. DNA showed it. Yeah. Now,
That's when you found out?
that's when they weren't my sisters, okay? They're her sisters, they're not mine. Because my older sister's from another mother. We had the same dad. Well, if you're probating it with a will or without a will, and with DNA now, they come up and say, hey, Ancestry DNA says this. That was my dad.
Wow.
Where's my part? So when you go to the court system to probate with a will or without a will, you open up to, I call it the chicken dance. It's whoever does the dance on the hot plate, the chicken on the hot plate. Whoever does that best is really going to walk out of there with the money. There's a guy in Mississippi. He's been fighting 2 years for 200 acres, and his mom put it in her will. Somebody come out of the woodwork, and he's getting ready to end up with 100 acres out of the 200, and he's been paying the bills all the past 2 years. He's about to go broke doing it.
So the other cool thing about a will or a trust is that Travis can cut his oldest or youngest son out of it and give everything to Caleb. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And here's the deal. This is what I tell people. It's Travis's money or it's Dominic's money. You do whatever you want with it. If you want to give it to an animal shelter, you've busted your chops to get it. So I'm not judging you whether you give it to one kid or the other kid or don't give it to none of them. I don't care. Yeah, it's your money.
Yeah.
So you can also be specific about how that money is distributed within the trust.
That's right.
Correct.
They've got to go to this school, get this grades, have this color of hair. You can be very specific.
So my parents had 10 kids, 2 parents, 10 kids, no twins, just a bunch of babies. I grew up in Iowa, and there's farmland in Iowa that my parents own. And talking about being very specific, what they've done with theirs is once my parents pass, the trust is going to be split into the annual distributions will be split into 10 separate LLCs that us kids will be able to go and collect. The land's all rented out annually. So we'll be able to go collect that. But at the end of 10 years, according to the trust, so talking about being very specific, the land is supposed to sell, but my parents' desire is that if one of us wanted to buy it, we could use income from 10 years and try to buy a farm. But they're letting a 10-year period of time pass before the assets are liquid or are sold. So yeah, you can do so much with it. Robert Kiyosaki you guys probably all know who that is, but he just did a deal. He's got a prime real estate in Scottsdale. I believe it's in Scottsdale. It was a gym. He just turned it into a medical facility. He owns the dirt. He signed it on a 100-year lease. Robert's like 83 years old. He signed it on a 100-year lease, and I mean, he doesn't care. I think he makes $120,000 a month on that. But it's the same thing. It's all going to in a trust, and it's being given to charities from there, I believe. But it's all in how we structured it. So you're exactly right. You can structure however you want. And if you don't structure it anyway, I mean, a will, they're going to try to say this is what you wanted. If there's nothing, then it's what people agree to and what the court decides. And it usually, 30-40% of that gets tied up in attorney fees because Travis hires an attorney and Caleb hires an attorney and Wayne hires an attorney and they all fight over it and
Nobody wins.
yeah.
Something, there's tons of things I could talk about on these trusts, but trust may not be for everybody. Okay, I'm not up here trying to sell you a trust. I'm up here just trying to educate you on what other options you have. Actually, I'm gonna go back. I planned on sitting out here in the audience with y'all. Okay, and
When he showed up here, I said, hey.
yeah, he says, hey, and I'm like, I'm always ready. So if I seem scattered, I apologize. I'm not normally this scattered, but a trust allows your assets to pass seamlessly. Okay, nobody has to sign off on anything but the trustee. Okay, Robert Kiyosaki's amassed billions of dollars. Okay, and how many of y'all know your great-grandparents' names? 4 people? Okay, I don't know mine. Okay, Rockefeller, you heard that name? You know why all their kids know them? They set it up in a trust. Okay, and they use different insurance vehicles to fund that trust when somebody passes, so the trust always has money. Okay, that's something to consider. And whenever I was told that, it's just like it hit me upside the head. I don't know my great-grandparents, and without doing a bunch of ancestry stuff, I probably never will, because they didn't intentionally think about things in the future. And we have tremendous opportunity living where we live, that we can be intentional and think about these things. So, what other questions you have?
Another question that was on the list of questions tonight is tax implications. What's the difference? I mean, Jeff would have talked about the way you set up an LLC versus how that affects your taxes. But on trust, how are the differences? I mean, in a trust, it's just going to go seamless.
In a trust, it'll be seamless, and I was talking to, where you at? Ezekiel. I was talking to him. When you buy a piece of property, and let's say, I'm just going to put it in my parents' name with me. I'm joint tenancy on the property. Your cost basis is whatever the parent paid for that property. So if they paid $100,000 for it, they put your name on the deed, they pass away, the house sells for $500,000, you're going to pay tax on $400,000. That's your basis is $100,000. And with a trust, your tax basis would be, $400,000. There would be no tax to transfer it to you if you wanted to move it outside of the trust. So tax-wise, there is a break when you go over, I think it's like $12.5 million is what you can shelter inside of it. If you go over that, you're going to pay tax, but there's a way we can structure that with an AB trust that will get you double that coverage. So yeah, tax-wise, it saves a lot of tax.
In regards to an LLC, there are advantages, and it really has to do with if it's an active income coming in or passive income going in. And if you're gonna file as an S-Corp or C-Corp if you're really bigger. I'm not at all an attorney on this. I know that there's different things we've done, and it really has to do with, is this active income or passive income? But again, it really goes back to how you set it up at the beginning. You might be able to talk about this better than me, but I've heard stories about Sam Walton. You guys know who Sam Walton is? And what I've heard is he did a great job of setting it up at the beginning so that his family really benefited throughout. A lot of people, they get ultra wealthy and then they pay a bunch of money and they get it all set up. And again, you can do that and that's better than not, but starting it up from the beginning correctly can really help you with transfers and things, right?
It can, yeah.
Because you get, if we set up an AB, I'm assuming, we set up an AB trust, is that what you called it?
Yeah.
From the beginning, it's gonna be a lot better than getting to realizing I've got 20 million in assets, I need to set this up. Now we're gonna have to go back and rebuild the whole thing, right?
Right, you'd have to make major changes, and it may be best just to push that one aside and start with a new one, so. Another thing is with trusts, if you have a special needs child or grandchild, and you think, well, when I die, I'm gonna will them 10% of my estate, and that 10% is $100,000, and you give it to this special needs child that's on all these programs that it's taken them years to get on, they get that $100,000, it's probably just knocked them off of those programs. So what you think is a blessing is actually going to be a curse to them, because when that money runs out, it's going to take years to get them back on those programs. So there's a special needs trust that can be done. There's a children's trust that can be done. There's a veterans trust. There's a Medicaid trust or Medicare trust that can be done.
The sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit,
any way you
depending
want
on your situation, to get around a lot of the tax stuff and all that. I'm not a CPA or any of that, so, but there are ways that specifically, can be set up specifically for you.
Now, in regards to setting this stuff up, Travis, you said earlier, there's two kinds of attorneys, right? You might say there's offensive and defensive. And now that was a revelation to me. I didn't realize that, like, you want to try to find the guy that's asset protection orientated. Not just Joe Schmoes who writes up an LLC for you, but there's some terminology you're going to want in your LLC docs or your trust docs that give you added protection. Somebody I met at a conference years ago when I was kind of starting out is this guy named Clint Coons. He has an organization called Anderson Advisors. He can tell you a lot of stories, but this would be a guy that specializes in setting it up for your protection rather than trying to go after it, and setting these things up so that you are protected and the pass-through is clean and easy, rather than somebody breaching it when they fall down the stairs and your LLC not being set up right, and now they come in. Do people breach trust?
Very difficult to. I mean, if they don't follow what the trust says, then they could be an
It's
orange
not funded or
jumpsuit.
something, yeah.
So, but unfortunately, we live in a country to where money makes people go crazy sometimes. So, I'm not saying they don't try to steal out of it or things like that, but they have,
Yeah.
But it's not good.
Do you feel like there's just more respect for trust than there are LLCs and whatnot? Is that part of it?
LLC serves a purpose, but a trust is more, it's more in depth, I guess, is the best way to say it. Because an LLC's got to be probated if you don't direct it into the trust.
Sure.
So, I mean, a trust doesn't have to be probated. I was at a dinner the other night, and this lady's like, well, I don't need this. We've got our kids on all of our stuff. And I said, really? She says, yeah. I said, well, a lot of people do that. So let me tell you, the stories about that. If your kid is driving home and somebody runs a red light and T-bones them, it kills the person in the car that ran the red light, they're gonna sue your kid even though your kid wasn't at fault. And I said, your kid's on your house, right? Well, yeah, my house, my bank accounts, all that. I said, well, that's your kid's assets. And that lady, she's probably 65. She turned her head and looked at me and, do what? And I said, yeah. I said, nobody explained that to you? I said, half your house is hers. And I said, I guarantee you that attorney's going to go after it. Even if it's not her fault. I said, even if it's not her fault. I said,
So they have them named as beneficiaries on it, or
No,
not beneficiaries, but
no, they're joint tenancy.
joint tenancy?
Yeah. And they do that to get around the probate. And sometimes
see.
it works. But, you know, a
It
lot
does
of
as long as there's not a lawsuit along the way.
Exactly, yeah. Or a divorce. Let's say the kid got married and divorced.
Yeah.
Well, that house is part of that. Yeah, part of that asset. Well, you know, they're not going to get the trust. So yeah.
What kind of questions do you guys have?
So would it be fair to say, so like I run a contracting company, it's an S-Corp, we've got real property and LLCs. And I've heard advice that at a certain financial amount, you should break your LLCs up and actually have a couple of them. Because so you don't have 20 million in one LLC, you've got 5 in each or whatever. Would it be fair to say that the trust is kind of like a holding company or a parent company that owns it all for the purpose of handling your estate? Or are you saying you operate the trust from day one?
You could look at it as a holding company, as far as that goes, but a trust can live for, I think it's 99 years right now. So it's its own entity that you just, you know, control. So yeah, you could use it as a holding company for that stuff.
And you could correct me, but I almost think you want to, Travis, because you have landscaping business active, S-Corp, I think. You've got rental properties, which are passive income. And those are two very separate businesses. And you want to have a business, you want to pay your taxes out of here, very different from taxes out of here. But if you were to like diagram it out, yeah, they would go back to the trust, which would own them. But if you didn't have those, in my opinion,
Yeah, don't close them down.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you pushed all that in and wrote checks out of your trust for the landscaping and the rentals, it would really be confusing to the IRS and to your own self. Whereas you're better off having separate bank accounts, keeping.
I almost think, and I don't have a lot of experience in this, but I almost think there's a trigger upon death where they refer in the LLC document, possibly.
You would have a document that when you died, that LLC would belong to the trust. And the trust, whoever's the trustee, which would in most cases be your spouse, that they would still operate it. The business would not miss a beat. To where if you don't have that in place, it could get ugly, you know.
So for real estate investors, we're probably still running LLCs, and then we just have the trust in place for an unforeseen death.
Yeah.
You could.
And for, one other thing while I'm talking, I'll be quiet, but I've seen a lot of people that, so in real estate, hopefully we do better than the average Joe. I've seen a lot of people that their kids are somewhat ruined by large amounts of money, all of a sudden on their grandkids. So passing on interest and earnings and rather than the whole corpus is probably a good idea to consider, which makes a trust attractive.
Y'all ever heard of Ron LeGrand? Heard of him? He's passed, but go Google his YouTube or YouTube, what do you do to get YouTube? You Google it?
Yeah.
Google his YouTube, and he'll talk to you about land trusts and everything there. He's bought and sold hundreds and hundreds of properties all over the United States. So I'm not telling you shut your LLCs down, your S-Corps. I'm not saying that because they still need to operate that way, but you need to think about what happens when you pass. Yeah, it's more of an estate plan. So, but the vehicle I will recommend for 99% of people is trust. So,
That land trust too, is that what you called it? I think that varies a little bit by state based on how much protection you have with an LLC.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So if you're in a good state for an LLC, it's not as crucial to have that as a land trust, that extra shield, I think. I do want to maybe we can wing this a little bit, but have you guys ever heard of a series LLC? To kind of answer your question, maybe somebody mentioned it. If you get lots of assets, at what point do you spread them into other LLCs, or do you do a series LLC? What does that look like? And Clint Kuhn, he would tell you that the magic number for him is $500,000. You own $500,000 in an LLC, and then you move it over to another LLC, and that just, if you were to get sued, it would only allow them to go after X amount of equity instead of a larger amount. A series LLC, you could actually break it up. You would have your mother LLC and these series under, and you would put these houses in these series. The complication to that is tax time, with having to file each series as a separate entity. So it can get rather expensive with your CPA. I was going down that rabbit trail a couple of years ago, and I was getting advice, and they said, honestly, in Oklahoma, you probably don't need to do the series. You guys are pretty well protected. This was the advice we got, and it's not worth the extra hassle at tax time in Oklahoma to do a series LLC versus regular LLC. Do you got any comments on that?
I know very little about them, but what you're talking about seems right from what I've heard. So the tax time will break you.
So I ran a couple of landscaping LLCs under my S-Corp, and the account, I forget the terminology, but it just dumps right in automatically to one return. I mean, they've got a system for that.
Yeah.
Simple parent company. Yeah.
I've heard a couple people recently talk about putting their rental properties in their trust. My understanding is if you do that, they can come after other assets within your trust, because it is the legal entity that owns that asset. So if a tenant breaks a leg, just like they can in an LLC, they can come after anything that's in that LLC. Same thing with the trust. I don't know why we would give that advice to put rental properties in a trust and not in an LLC and an LLC into a trust.
Yeah.
But I've heard that a lot recently. I don't know if you guys have everybody done that.
I haven't, but I personally own nothing, so if you'll sue me, sue away. Everything I got's in a trust, and I'm a trustee, so it just adds more complication to it, just like with your LLC. Most attorneys, if they're gonna sue, John Q. property owner out here, they pull it up and see who the title's deeded to, and they're like, wow, this is a trust. Well, let's see where this trust belongs. Well, if they pull it in one of the states that Marty was talking about earlier, they're going, wow, I don't know if I really want to mess with this. You got a claim here, you're saying they owe you $40,000, and I'm going to have $60,000 in attorney fees. I don't know if I want to chase this down that hard. This guy's apparently got his ducks in a row. Same with a trust. If they pull it up and it's XYZ trust, they're gonna. I'm not saying they're not gonna sue you, but they're gonna think long and hard about suing you. So
Is it harder to sue somebody for the trust?
the attorneys have to work more.
It's just a different defendant on the docket.
The attorneys have to work harder, and most attorneys they want the bread and butter. So it just puts another layer between them. And you got to realize a lot of these judges sitting up there have a trust. So they know if they hand down these rulings, it's probably going to affect their family too. So that's why they try to avoid it. It's like the ship that crashed, that hit the bridge. Okay? They go by different legal laws than what you and I go by. They go by the mariner laws. Well, those have been hundreds of years, thousands of years. So their liability is totally different. And so that's kind of how this is set up when you put it in a trust.
So what he's mentioning, going after the bread and butter, they're going to first
Right.
So each one of your homeowners policies has a liability feature. And probably what is wise is to have an umbrella policy on top of that. And so in the first deposition, what they're gonna do is ask you how much insurance you have in place. So it's generally, that's the amount they're asking for. I have yet to, so I get into it with vehicular problems over the years. But I haven't heard of too many asset hearings. They just want to know how much insurance you have. And so that's an intermediary thing. You probably ought to carry several things on umbrella.
Yeah,
Because you've got quite a few reps.
they want the quick money. They don't have to work for it, so.
What other questions do you guys have? I will just add, I don't geek on this out like I used to, but for a little bit, I geeked out a lot on kind of asset protection, but more taxes. And I think it's really important that we educate ourselves on that, because a lot of times attorneys, like CPAs, aren't going to help you out if you don't have the right questions to ask. I mean, if you get an asset protection guy who says, this is what I'll give you, blah, 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 I mean, that's different. But if you go to an attorney and say, hey, I'd like an LLC made, but you don't know what kind of verbiage needs to be in there, he's not going to put it in there necessarily. He's just going to give you a generic LLC. Same thing probably on a trust. Like, you want to go with the right company on a trust, because you can go to legalcontracts.com and print yourself a trust and fill
The
in
wording needs to be congruent, because if your trust has wording that's not congruent, they'll kick it out. So, yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, I haven't read this book, but I got this when I actually joined their organization. Just kind of have them look at our stuff. They do our taxes now. But this guy's on YouTube all over the place. Yeah, fascinating book on tax and legal playbook. Really learning how to learning about what the IRS says on how you can get around paying lots of money in taxes. He's got some really good stuff, some pretty clever stuff. Rich Dad Advisors. This is Ken McElroy. He talks a little bit in here about it, but the attorney that they have, I can't remember his name, but there's a purple book like this that would be similar to this on asset protection. But all those things are, I believe we should be informing ourselves a little bit about, just so we're not completely handicapping ourselves. And that's why we're here tonight, to talk about this stuff, so you guys can be a little more informed about what it looks like to protect yourself, and you're not just operating under Marty Hoffman forever, and I look great on paper, but really you do look great on paper. When you get sued, they're going to take everything Marty Hoffman has, as opposed to operating an LLC, maybe holding, ultimately everything gets funneled to a trust. I own nothing, trust owns everything, and there's nothing they do to get it. So,
I'm a book nerd. Okay, how many of y'all read books? Okay. My sister, younger sister, she would ask me years ago when I was in my 20s, and she says, how do you know this? Well, I just read. I was at a library sale or something the other day, and there was a guy by the name of Charles J. Givens, late night infomercial show, okay? Bought his stuff years ago, ended up getting pitched in the trash. I'm sitting there and there's that book. And I told my wife, I said, let me tell you a story with this book. I paid like, I don't know, it was $30, man, years ago. And I said, I got this book, and I'd forgot everything in it, and opened it up to the insurance section, okay? And it started talking about your insurance policies and how you can save money doing different things with your insurance policies. And that book, I'm sitting here, I'll be 61 tomorrow. I look at all these years, these 40 years of the knowledge that I got back then that saved me through all these years. Now, I'm an insurance agent too. And insurance agents get paid on commission. So the bigger the premium, the bigger commission we make, okay? Now that being said, we're in the environment, is everybody's insurance going up? Yeah, pretty much. Okay. You need to review your policy. You need to get a good insurance policy. Make sure you have a good agent that understands this and is not just in there for the buck. Because the knowledge you earn on taxes, it's going to say, Charles J. Gibbons talked about taxes 40 years ago. Saved me tons. You will make more money if you focus on tax savings than you'll make on buying and flipping properties. Now, when you buy and flip the property, you're going to save that money. It's going to help you. And it's just like Marty. We would eat breakfast every year or so, and when he first started the real estate deal, he's like, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do. I'm like, okay. And he did it, and I think sometimes you need to not know the bad things so you will actually take a step, okay? I've made horrible mistakes in real estate. The last real estate deal I did, I lost $500,000, okay? So, but I learned from it, and that's what he's up here trying to educate everybody, is to learn. And sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, but we're all going to make mistakes, and the best thing to do is try to avoid it.
Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. That's the Rich Dad series. That's what it's called. That's a good one. You guys have more questions? I just want to emphasize again, it's really important. Try not to DIY this. I mean, my PR story should be helpful to that. It kind of snowballed. There's a place to DIY, but when you're building assets and building wealth, you need to do it right at the beginning and set things up and get legal counsel as much as you can. So I kind of want to sing happy birthday if it's your birthday tomorrow.
It is my birthday tomorrow. You don't see my ID? No, I'm just,
No. You guys good with ending with happy birthday, and then we'll just kind of walk around and chit chat and network? All right, let's sing happy birthday to Leslie. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Leslie. Happy birthday to you.
thank y'all. And I was going to stay home tonight. Think about this.
I would have missed all that.
And I'm up here with the pro, man. I mean, come on.